Okay, hello everyone. Good morning. This is the voice of your initiator, Joseph Wonder. Alright, welcome to today's podcast. Today I'll be taking a little dig into the title Believers' Sufferings and God's Responses. Right? Why believers suffer and what does God have to do about it, or what does God have to say, or what does He do about it? Okay, and then because of the length or the importance of what I want to speak on, I would like to break it down so we can easily understand. And for that purpose, it could be into different parts. Alright, so let's say this is part 1. Okay, Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 8. Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 8, it says, though he, speaking about Jesus, were a son, yet he learnt obedience by the things which he suffered. So the Bible is saying, even though Jesus Christ was a son, he suffered, and the reason why is because so he could learn obedience. Another translation says, learn trust and obedience. Alright, so the big question is, why do men suffer? Okay, or rather, why do believers suffer? And a simple answer is just that. Number one is because life is a battlefield. Yes, life is a battlefield. We were born into a battlefield and we were not informed. We were born into a battlefield and given no opportunity to prepare. We were born into the middle of a fight and that we have nothing to do with. And the most painful part of it is we're not given an opportunity to choose whether we fight or not, whether we want to join the fight or not. We were sent into this world as an errand from the Father, as a strategy for dominion, and suffering is mandated when we live in ignorance of what sponsored our coming to this part of reality. Right, so looking into the Gospel of Matthew chapter 4 and verse 1, reading, then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. The same Gospel of Saint Matthew chapter 6 and verse 13, reading, and lead us not into temptation. Jesus was teaching us how to pray, right? But deliver us from all evil. So when we check Matthew 4:1 and Matthew 6:13, it looks a little bit contrasting, because the first verse says Jesus was being led by the Spirit of God to be tempted, and the second verse says, the second chapter says that Jesus is teaching us to pray to God not to lead us into temptation, right? And then, not to make it confusing, temptation simply means scrutiny or examination. Okay, so to be tempted means to be placed under scrutiny or to be placed under observation, and this is usually and obviously done by the devil, because remember, it was called the accuser of the brethren, Revelation chapter 12 and verse 10. So temptation can be anything, not just say fasting or things that have to do with morality or pleasure in general. Anything through life can tempt us, alright? And then the world tempts us in accordance to the prince that legally rules over it. Okay, because in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 3, we remember God said, let there be light, and there was light. But then man fell in chapter 3 of Genesis, and the whole system went again into another era of darkness. And darkness here means inconsistency with God's nature. And when Jesus came as an errand from the Father, he did not say let there be light and there was light like it was in Genesis chapter 1. What he did was to make men light, and then men in turn can lighten up the system of the world. Alright, so although Jesus Christ came, the system of the world is still in darkness until the saved men that have become light can spread that light. it is to these end scriptures like this we see in Matthew chapter 5 verse 14, let your light so shine. Alright, let your light so shine. Okay, so Jesus Christ being led to be tempted was there was a little diversion in the actual happening, because Matthew, as we read, although it was dictated by Apostle Matthew, but another man wrote it down. Matthew dictated, but because of the limitation of being learned, he needed someone to write. So we can expect a little diversion from the actual happening, because when we look at the gospel according to St. Luke described how Jesus Christ was full of the Holy Ghost, returned from Jordan, Luke chapter 4 and verse 1, and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, not to be tempted. And then verse 2 says, being 40 days tempted of the devil. So the Spirit of God led Jesus into the wilderness to prepare for the temptation the devil was bringing. And so this is the reason why Jesus says, pray that lead us not into temptation before we are prepared. That means, do not let the devil scrutinize us or place us under examination until we are fully prepared. Right? So clearly, the Holy Ghost brings the preparation, while the devil brings the temptation. Alright? So it is after not being sufficient or failing a temptation, we experience certain situations that are called suffering or crisis. So it is never about God. And one thing we should know about the situations of life is this, that the situations of life are the platform. It is just a neutral platform for a showcase of triumph or defeat. For example, our test in school, it is the same test that makes a student have an A that makes another student have a F. And all the difference, it was not the test that gave them the results, but rather their level of preparation. Right? So the lecturers just do what they love doing best, testing. The same way the devil is doing what he just loves doing, accusing, and usually on legal grounds without notice. And the system of earth too is just been doing what it has been programmed to do, not to be fair to us. Right? And then it is to this end that Apostle Paul spoke by the Spirit in Romans chapter 8 and verse 19, saying, for the earnest expectation of the creature waited for the manifestation of the sons of God. So even the earth is tired and is waiting for saved men to shine their light, so it too can be liberated, because the earth was aware of what it is like when Jesus Christ, rather when God in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 3 says, let there be light upon it. So did the tests come actively by God? No. Is God aware? Yes. But why did he not do anything about it? Now, I want us to listen carefully. Okay? I'll round up with this note with these points rather. Although God is aware, but Psalms chapter 24 in verse 1 says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. And then Psalms chapter 115 verse 16 says, the heaven, even the heavens are the Lord's, but the earth has he given to the children of men. So it's like the earth is his, but he gave it to the children of men. The same way a landlord leases out his property on clearly defined terms to a tenant. Alright? So from the beginning, it was God created the heavens and the earth, alright? But then he said, let them have dominion. So let men have dominion over the earth. So earth became out of jurisdiction for God on a clearly legal ground, although it is for him, but it is out of his jurisdiction. And that was why before he could do anything, he had to come to become a man. Alright? So having known this, our time is gone already. I believe we have a little bit understanding of how the seemingly things we call sufferings or situations that are not palatable or we don't like came to be. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. You sit tight on this journey of great flight, and until then, you keep shining.